When you think of Spider-Man, the first person that probably comes to mind is Peter Parker. And that makes sense because Peter Parker has been synonymous, well, not synonymous, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Peter Parker has been Spider-Man and will always be Spider-Man no matter who comes along, no matter how many clones, Ben Reilly, Kane, or Miles Morales, no matter how many people come around, Peter will always be Spider-Man. However, there is a new Spider-Man in town and we have to acknowledge him, and that Spider-Man is Miles Morales. And what makes Miles Morales really interesting is, unlike all the other Marvel experiments, all the other diversity experiments that they tried, Miles Morales kind of a little bit predates that whole let's be diverse for the sake of diversity trend. And Miles Morales is actually a unique and interesting character in his own right, who has his own backstory, his own lore, his own mythology that brought him along. And that's why we can accept Miles Morales as Spider-Man as opposed to some of the other characters that Marvel has tried to force down our throats, like Riri Williams. But we're not here to talk about Marvel and their agenda to sell comics. We're actually here to talk about Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Peter Parker, the two quintessential Spider-Mans. When you think of Spider-Man, again, he is Peter Parker. Peter Parker personified is Spider-Man. However, now when you also think of Spider-Man, you gotta ask which one, because Miles Morales is also climbing up the ranks to be synonymous with the name Spider-Man. So in this video, we're gonna be looking at the top 5 differences between Miles Morales and Peter Parker, because like I said, they are Spider-Man. However, they are still two different characters, different mythologies, different backgrounds, and even though they interlink and have more similarities than they have differences, they are two unique characters. So let's start off with number 1, and the most obvious thing everyone already knows: Peter Parker is white, Miles Morales is black. And with that being said, Peter Parker is actually older than Miles Morales. Miles Morales became Spider-Man when he was in middle school, as opposed to Peter, who was a little bit older than Miles, who was already in high school when he first initially became Spider-Man. So that just that difference in mindset alone is a big thing when it comes to the character of Spider-Man. The race thing also, while plays a big difference, doesn't play a big difference. Because even though Peter is white and Miles is Latino and black, both characters are very grounded and very real. So people can, from different backgrounds, can actually relate to either or characters because they have real life, real human problems and real life relatability. Aside from their skin tones being different, their costumes are uniquely different as well. We know the classic Peter Parker Spider-Man costume, and we know Peter Parker has gone through various costumes throughout the years. And when it comes to Miles, Miles has been around going on 8 years now. However, his costume has not really changed. Miles has had the same consistent costume, and it's in stark contrast to Peter. Miles' costume pays homage to the original Spider-Man costume. However, it's something that belongs to him, and it makes him a different character because even though it's clearly inspired by the original, it is Miles' own suit. And that is a very important part of the characters, because had they just taken Peter's costume and given it to Miles, it would have cheapened not only the Spider-Man brand, but Miles as a character and Peter as a character as well. And moving on to number 2, their origins. The origins of Miles and Peter are similar yet different. Of course, they both were bitten by spiders. However, the way Miles is bitten by his spider and the way Peter is bitten by his spider is completely different. We all know Peter Parker's story by now. I'm not going to go regurgitate it. When it comes to Miles, Miles was bitten by a spider. However, this spider was created directly by Norman Osborn with Peter's blood to replicate Peter's abilities, because at this point, Norman wanted what Peter had. He wanted Peter's powers. However, Miles' uncle, the villain known as Prowler, snuck into Oscorp and stole some things from them, and he picked up an unwanted guest. The spider snuck into his bag, and when Miles went to visit his uncle at his house, the spider climbed out and bit Miles, thus giving Miles his powers, and thus created Miles Morales as Spider-Man. Now, when it comes to their very beginning and their origins, that's similar yet different. However, when it comes to getting their powers, they both approached it differently. Peter embraced his powers initially, and Miles rejected it. And that's because Miles' father has a big disdain for people with powers, and because of that, Miles himself initially rejects the powers. He doesn't want them. He doesn't even want to be a superhero because he does not want to embrace that lifestyle. It's too much for him, and he deals with it in a very 11, 12-year-old kind of way, because again, he is in middle school, he doesn't want the powers, and he knows his parents will not approve. And we know when it comes to Peter, what truly set him down his path was the death of Uncle Ben. However, when it comes to Miles, it was the death of Peter Parker. And that brings me on to number 3. Now, when I say the death of Peter Parker, I don't mean the main Peter Parker, because the third difference between the two characters are they're from different universes. Peter Parker is from the main Marvel universe, also known as Universe 616, while Miles Morales is from the Ultimate Universe, and that is another thing that separates the two characters. And that's another reason why Miles as a character was more accepted as opposed to other characters that Marvel tried to add diversity to, and that's because Miles came from a separate universe who did not interfere with the original Peter Parker, and he was able to blossom in his own separate universe and become his own character and become a character we all love. In that universe, Peter Parker dies, and when Peter Parker dies, that inspires Miles to take on the persona of Spider-Man and become Spider-Man in order to honor Peter. And that's why his costume is a bit different, because he tried to use Peter's costume, but everyone knew it was in bad taste. Miles Morales became his own character and he got his own suit. Moving on to difference number 4. And the fourth difference between the two characters are their personalities are very different. When it comes to Peter, Peter was always kind of the nerd, recluse, and he was kind of a loner. Granted, when Peter grew up, he became part of the Avengers. He also spent time with the Fantastic Four, but for the most part, Peter kept to himself, and even when in his own personal life, Peter kept to himself. He didn't reveal too much to anybody, and so Peter was someone who struggled socially. But however, Miles Morales is a stark contrast to that. Miles Morales, unlike Peter, is a character who is more vocal, he's more outgoing. Damn near everybody knows who he is as Spider-Man. His parents know, his best friend knows, every superhero team that he joins knows his secret identity. Miles is not afraid to let people in because Miles grew up differently than Peter. Miles has a different upbringing. I want to say Miles is more emotionally intelligent than Peter Parker was when Peter first became Spider-Man. And difference number 5, the final difference between two characters are their powers. Now, they have pretty similar powers when it comes down to it. The spider bite, similar, like every power that Peter Parker has, Miles Morales has. However, Miles does have some differences than Peter. We can say when it comes down to powers, Miles is better Spider-Man than Peter Parker, only in the powers department, because he has every power that Peter has and then some. The prime example would be Miles Morales' cloaking. Like certain spiders, Miles Morales can actually blend into his background and cloak himself, which is supremely helpful when you're dealing with supervillains and you're also trying to sneak around as Spider-Man, because Miles Morales can just go invisible. Even in a crowd full of people, Miles has no problems turning invisible and just disappearing from the naked eye. The second power that Miles has that Peter does not have is his venom stingers. Now, certain spiders do sting you with venom, however, Miles does not have poisonous venom. His venom stingers are more like an energy shock, and Miles can emit that energy shock from his hands and kind of like certain spiders zap his opponents. So again, another power that Peter doesn't have. Anyway guys, to me those are the top 5 differences between Miles Morales and Peter Parker. Now I'm sure there are more differences between the characters, but these are my top 5 differences between the two. If you know any more, let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. And guys, if you like this video, definitely hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you guys haven't already. And until next time,